For all you Fiat lovers, here's an Abarth, I think. You might be able to fit 2 poodles in here. Hey, where's the engine? Somebody actually bought this thing. We have a more modern Fiat in our garage here, so let's roll it out. It's the 2017 Fiat 124. A lot of the news clippings are comparing this to the older Fiat 124, claiming it's being reintroduced again. Not a good comparison. This is what the 1970 Fiat 124 sports car looked like. On the positive side, it was a nice looking car. Sort of mini Ferrari, had good performance, excellent fuel economy, nice handling. On the negative side, it had some issues like repairs. Clutches, electrics, body parts, interior parts, rust, fuel systems, fan belts, drive belts. Basically everything would go wrong. But hey, you had to rack up some miles to do that, like around 15,000 to 20,000 to be exact. By 30,000, they were usually sent to the scrapyard to make beer cans. So no, there's no relationship between the old Fiat 124 and this new 2017 Fiat 124, aside from the nameplate. In fact, the only vehicle we can compare this to is the Mazda Miata MX-5, which shares the same platform. But there are some differences, though. We did test the Mazda MX-5 as well, this particular car you see on your screen. Because of length and time, we had to do a separate video, however. We'll have a link for that after we're done with the Fiat test here. Instead of the Mazda 2-liter engine, we get a Fiat 1.0-liter turbo, putting out 160 horsepower and 164 foot-pounds of torque, rated at 26 to 35 mpg with the manual transmission, or 25 to 36 with the automatic transmission, which we got on this car. There are some altered suspension pieces, which we can't see from here, but they're there. And the Fiat version gets a different body style on the outside. Something it's better looking, something it's not. I think they're both good looking, myself. Another view from the front. These bulged out headlights are different too. We're going to take these out when it gets dark and see how they perform. It's dark enough. Let's see how these headlights perform. Here we have the low beam lights on a building 100 feet away. More than adequate light. High beams. Wow, lights up pretty good. This building is 300 feet away. We have the high beams on. Lights up real good. Low beams. Also reaches out. Overall, these are pretty good headlights. When driving on backcountry roads, you can see how the headlights light up the countryside. Quite well, actually. Some of those road signs are approximately, what, about 600 yards? Take a look at the interior, and I can tell you right now it's cramped, so if you're on the SlimFast program, you might not fit in here. If you're looking to store items, you're out of luck too, because there's no glove box. The so-called console, you might fit a phone in there. Between the seats, this is all the storage you get. Not much room in the trunk either. No spare tire, and I don't even see a tire repair kit. No problem, that's why I brought my own. The top is not electric, manually operated instead, which is fine because you don't need an electric top on something this simple. You want a roof, you just hit this lever. Put it there. Then latch it shut. That simple. And while we're looking up, the Fiat has the same flaws as the Mazda, one of the most worthless sun visors I've ever seen. Too small, they don't fold. If you're driving on a sunny day, you might need a good set of sunglasses. But at least the controls are very simple and easy to use. Here's the climate control. 3 knobs. And in between the seats, a rotary knob giving you various functions like applications, entertainment, communication, navigation, and settings. This 6-speed automatic transmission does have a manual override, but only partially so. If the computer doesn't like the gear you're trying to put it in, you won't get it. And I was disappointed that there were no paddle shifters on the steering wheel. But that's just the way it is. You want to shift? You got to shift with this. The side plate says that the tires should be loaded at 29 pounds per square inch all around. This particular car came loaded at 34 pounds in the tires, and I'm going to leave it that way because it should make the handling a little more crisper, although the ride a bit stiffer. So let's test the ride quality. We'll start by hitting some of these speed bumps at 25 miles per hour. Number 1. Didn't feel that. Number 2. Third one. Ooh, this is a bigger one. I felt that one. But overall, pretty good. Just to note, this engine sounds like crap when it's idling, like a garbage disposal. Not the quietest I've ever heard. That's the bad news. But the good news is, once it gets rolling, it sounds pretty good. So let's go out and do some driving. One question I get asked often, which car is quicker, the Mazda version or this Fiat version? If you're doing 0 to 60 times, I found the Mazda to be slightly quicker at 6.3 seconds versus this Fiat, which has been doing 6.7 seconds. The 0 to 60 times are a bit misleading because below 2,000 RPM there's not much going on with this engine because the turbo isn't kicking in. But once you reach around 3,000, especially 4,000, that's when the turbo starts pumping in some gas and air in that power plant, and this thing really picks up fast. That means if you're racing around corners or doing high-speed passing, the Fiat's going to have the edge. But we'll demonstrate that later when we take this out on the open road. So going from the stop, there's a bit of lag, but now we're picking up RPM. Yeah, now we're moving. The engine sounds a lot better, too. Nice brakes, by the way. The Fiat might be slower than the Mazda at 0 to 60, but on back roads like this, when the turbo kicks in, the Fiat 124 is definitely quicker. You might have noticed all the noise that was coming into the interior, and I can tell you this is one of the noisiest cars I've ever driven. Yes, the Mazda version is noisy, but this is far worse. A good portion of this racket comes around the windows. Sounds like there's a hurricane on the outside. Must be a fit issue. But hey, it's a light 2,400-pound sports car, so why complain? We're having fun, right? The temperatures drop 100 degrees down to cool, so let's put the top down to get some air in our hair. This electric power steering has no feel or feedback, and on the highway it has a lot of slop, so it's hard to go in a straight line. But on back roads, when you're taking corners, actually it's not too bad, pretty quick. So it's kind of a trade-off. Driving fast in corners, yes. Taking a highway trip, no. You just have to live with it. Wow, I thought it was noisy with the roof up over our head. Put it down. Forget about playing the stereo, you'd never hear it. Driving with the top down is a lot more comfortable when you're driving slow like this. Just back roads, simple cruising. We just did a 50-mile highway trip at 70 miles per hour, and here's our fuel economy, 34.8 mpg. 34.8 mpg going up, and now coming back, 37.2. Add the two together and divide by 2, and that's your best highway mileage. Well, we're at the local car show, so we'll see if my little Fiat gets any attention. Yeah.
What do you think that was for? Starting.
About as healthy looking as Hillary.
And now we use a key, right? But back.
Poor little Fiat just isn't getting the attention it deserves. Uh-oh, they found out I'm here. Time to split. I told you earlier in the video that when this engine's idling, it sounds like garbage, but you know, once this engine gets running at high speeds, it's one of the sweetest power plants I've ever heard. Especially when that turbo whine kicks in. Unfortunately, when you hit highway speeds, there's so much wind noise it drowns out just about everything. I feel like I'm in the middle of a tornado. Every time I drive on this road, I have to stop and say hello to the giant frog. It's the water they drink. Enough about the frog show, let's do some driving. Kruger family made a fortune selling guns in this country, and that's why they can afford the nicest spread in the valley. A really beautiful ranch. And they bought the one across the road too. Now that's high living. I'm jealous. Every sports car driver's nightmare. Hey, it's a 50-mile-per-hour limit, not 20. Okay, we did 350 miles with the wind blowing in my ears. I'm half deaf right now, so it's time to stop driving and take a closer look at this car. The price starts approximately $26,000, but if you're not careful with the options, it can really skyrocket. The obvious question, should you get the Fiat version or the Mazda version? It has more to do with the transmission than the car, as far as I'm concerned. This Fiat power plant is a high-revving sports car engine just begging to be hooked up to a 6-speed manual gearbox. If you want to ship it yourself and you want a manual transmission, this is going to be the engine you want. For those who prefer the automatic transmission, it does work pretty good with the Fiat engine. No real complaints. But it also works a bit better with the Mazda engine because it has more cubic inches and lower torque output. So if I was getting the automatic, I would choose the Mazda car. But if you want to choose the Fiat, you won't have many issues. But we're getting ahead of ourselves here because you haven't watched the Mazda MX-5 Miata test we did. And the link for that video is coming up right now.